Madam President.
Last week, on September 26, 2024, 2 years passed since the unprecedented terrorist attack against a civilian cross-border pipeline infrastructure facility. The explosion of 2 branches of the Nord Stream gas pipeline in the international waters of the Baltic Sea, in the exclusive economic zone of Denmark and Sweden. This event was rightly the focus of the Security Council's attention, since it poses a direct threat to international peace and security, energy and environmental security in Europe, and navigation in the Baltic Sea. Since then, we have discussed this topic more than 10 times, both in open and closed formats. At the initiative of our country, 3 attempts were made to coordinate the statements of the President of the Council on this terrorist attack. 1 draft resolution on the subject was also introduced, which did not receive the required number of votes. We believe that today is the right time to look around and find out where we are 2 years after the gas pipeline was blown up. I will start with the positive. None of the members of the Security Council and the UN as a whole, except perhaps the Kiev regime and its Polish Baltic accomplices, who have long gone mad on the basis of Russophobia, dispute the fact that the attempt to destroy Nord Stream deserves condemnation, and those responsible for this crime must be punished. This is important not only from the point of view of international law, including the 1997 International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings, but also in order to prevent such sabotage against international underwater infrastructure. In addition to gas and oil pipelines, these are also electrical and communication cables, fiber optic communication lines, and other networks, on the stable functioning of which the well-being of hundreds of millions of people depends. If they are threatened, enormous damage could be done to the entire global economy. I hope we all understand this. But if we want to ensure that these facilities are not endangered, the terrorist attack against Nord Stream must be investigated with special care, and those responsible for it, be they countries, criminal groups, or individual criminal characters, must be punished in such a way that no one will even think about repeating their actions. There is no doubt that they are now closely monitoring the progress of the investigation of the terrorist attack. And here, unfortunately, we will not be able to do without negativity. As we all remember, 2 years ago, the countries adjacent to the area of the terrorist attack, Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, launched their investigations. In February 2024, Denmark and Sweden announced the completion of their national investigative actions. The only conclusion after a year and a half of work was that the Nord Streams were indeed deliberately destroyed with the help of explosive devices, but the continuation of criminal proceedings within the Danish and Swedish jurisdictions is not possible. In other words, Stockholm and Copenhagen stated the obvious, that the gas pipelines were blown up, and happily shrugged their shoulders. And the most striking thing is that after that, our Western colleagues, instead of calling a spade and saying that the king is actually naked at a briefing we convened on April 26th, vied with each other in asserting that the investigative actions carried out by Denmark and Sweden were effective and met high standards of the rule of law. Now, as they convince us, we need to wait for the completion of the equally supposedly effective and transparent investigation of Germany. And this is despite the fact that Berlin has not bothered to provide the Security Council with specific and substantive information on the results it has achieved, at least intermediately, for 2 years. Moreover, any of our attempts to coordinate collective signals from the Council calling on Berlin to hurry up and show greater transparency were invariably blocked by the United States and its allies under the pretext that it was impossible to put pressure on German investigators. We are extremely disappointed and surprised by this, because the investigation by the German authorities, as well as the completed investigations by Denmark and Sweden, are completely non-transparent for us. This is despite the fact that Russia is clearly the affected party and has sent requests for legal assistance to these three states, which were simply ignored. Colleagues, this whole situation creates very specific and very dangerous challenges to international peace and security, and it is the direct duty of UN members to respond to them. Chief among them, the dangerous consequences of impunity, I have already mentioned. In addition, the lack of proper transparency on the part of the German authorities is already leading to the emergence of a wide variety of versions of what happened and assumptions about who may be behind this crime. If they appear due to the professional curiosity of journalists and their tendency to sensationalism, then it is necessary to fight them exclusively by promoting reliable official information, which the German authorities still do not do. As a result, suspicions are now raised about the actions or inaction not only of the authorities of the United States, Norway, Great Britain, and Germany, but also of Poland, which allegedly deliberately helped one of the suspects to escape. There is, however, another explanation for the appearance of many of the most incredible versions of what happened recently. This is the elementary desire of the customers and executors of this crime to cover their tracks and put the investigation on the wrong track. At least two circumstances speak in his favor. Firstly, it is the absolute implausibility of the allegations of involvement in the explosion of a group of Ukrainian amateur divers who have gone out of control. For a Hollywood blockbuster, such a scenario is quite suitable, but for real life, it is unlikely. Moreover, the overwhelming majority of experts argue that without state support, it would have been impossible to carry out such an undermining. Secondly, the cover-up version is supported by the desire of our Western colleagues to defend Berlin's delay in its investigation. The calculation here is clear. Until the investigation is completed, they manage to sabotage the adoption of any products by the Council. If the investigation is completed, they will not have such arguments. In these circumstances, Germany, consciously or not, acts as a spoiler, in fact, blocking any steps by the international community to establish the circumstances of the Nord Stream explosion and punish its customers and executors. Such a niche in which our German colleagues find themselves is all the more surprising, because the destruction of gas pipelines has directly affected Germany's economic interests. And even the top leadership of Germany itself recognizes the gravity of the crime committed. Last month, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz himself recognized the incident as a terrorist attack that requires a comprehensive investigation. Under these conditions, Berlin's impotence and servility finally put an end to any ambitions and claims to a global role. I want Berlin to realize this obvious truth. Be that as it may, 2 years later, all the suspicions we had caused by Western statements, and in fact, by frank admissions of involvement in the Nord Stream explosions made by a number of US and European officials, have not only not been dispelled, but on the contrary have been further aggravated. In the context of the policy chosen by our Western colleagues, including in the UN Security Council, it cannot be otherwise. So today, we are forced to announce the completion of work on another draft statement by the President of the Security Council due to the absolute lack of cooperation between the United States and its allies. We have been trying to agree on it for more than a month, held several rounds of consultations, and acted in a constructive spirit. But if our opponents are faced with the task of preventing any meaningful collective decisions or statements by the UN Security Council, then there is no chance of success. Colleagues, if you think that your obstructionist actions are discouraging us and reducing our resolve to identify and punish those responsible for blowing up Nord Stream, then you are very much mistaken. With each of your new sly maneuvers to impede the work of the Security Council on this topic, our determination to seek the truth and the conviction that we are on the right track, and you really have something to hide, only grows stronger. Moreover, it is becoming increasingly clear that without establishing the truth about the Nord Stream terrorist attack, our world simply will not be able to return to any constructive interaction between global players, in which the countries of the Global South are so interested. There can be no situation in which one part of our planet, the one that arrogantly imagines itself to be part of the beautiful garden, has immunity from fair and well-deserved punishment. We want you to understand this very clearly and have no illusions that you will be able to get away with it from the murky waters of the Baltic Sea. Thank you for your attention. Madam President, we would like to ask our French colleague a question who accuses us of insisting on the term terrorist attack in relation to the sabotage of the Nord Streams. Why don't you accuse German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who publicly recognized the incident as a terrorist act on September 14th, of the same procedure? Especially given how zealously you defend the effectiveness and impartiality of the German investigation. Attempts by a number of our Western colleagues who spoke today to draw parallels be.